Santa's Slumber, a Christmas comedy tale, by Reuben White. Once upon a time, in the quaint town of Chestnutville, nestled snugly in a valley between two snow-capped mountains, there lived a family by the name of Johnson. The Johnsons were known far and wide for their elaborate Christmas celebrations, and every year, they went all out to ensure that the holiday was nothing short of spectacular. Now, it was Christmas Eve, and the Johnsons had been preparing for weeks. Their house was adorned with twinkling lights that could be seen from space, and the aroma of freshly baked cookies wafted through the neighborhood, enticing even the grumpiest of Scrooges to smile. The Johnson children, Timmy and Jenny, had been bouncing off the walls with excitement all day long. They couldn't wait for Santa Claus to visit and deliver their presents. With their pajamas on, they placed a plate of cookies and a glass of milk on the living room table, ready for Santa's arrival. As night fell and the clock struck midnight, Santa began his worldwide journey, delivering presents to all the good children. He had a schedule to keep, and he was determined to make every child's Christmas special. Santa's first stop in Chestnutville was the Johnsons' house. He expertly navigated the sleigh through the starry sky and landed on the roof with a soft thud. With a wink of his eye and a twist of his nose, Santa magically slid down the chimney, landing gracefully by the fireplace. Seeing the plate of cookies and the glass of milk, Santa couldn't resist. He munched on the cookies, savoring every bite, and gulped down the milk. All that cookie eating and milk drinking had made Santa quite sleepy. He found a cozy spot by the fireplace, curled up and drifted off into a deep slumber. Hours passed, and inside the Johnsons' house, all was quiet. The children were tucked into their beds, their dreams filled with visions of sugar plums and toy trains. The parents, Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, were nestled snugly in their beds, exhausted from the day's festivities. The only sound in the house was the gentle ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. But then, another sound joined in, a loud, rumbling snore that echoed through the house like the roar of a freight train. Timmy and Jenny stirred in their sleep and exchanged puzzled glances. What was that noise? They crept out of their beds and tiptoed down the stairs, their curiosity piqued. As they reached the living room, their eyes widened, and their jaws dropped. There, by the fireplace, Santa Claus lay sprawled out, snoring so loudly that it sounded like a choir of trumpeting elephants. Jenny poked her brother, and they both giggled at the sight of Santa Claus, snoring away. But they knew they had to be quiet, they didn't want to wake him up. Meanwhile, Santa continued to snore blissfully, completely unaware that he had overslept. He dreamt of snowball fights with elves and sleigh rides with reindeer, while the Johnson children watched in amazement. Back in their bedroom, Mr. and Mrs. Johnson were awakened by their children's giggles. They exchanged a puzzled look and followed the laughter down the stairs. When they saw Santa Claus snoozing by the fireplace, they couldn't contain their amusement. Mrs. Johnson covered her mouth to stifle her laughter, while Mr. Johnson shook his head in disbelief. The whole family gathered around Santa, trying to decide what to do. Should they wake him up? Should they let him sleep? Just then, Santa let out a particularly thunderous snore, and they all burst into laughter. It was like the world's funniest comedy show had come to their living room. Finally, Santa stirred in his sleep, blinking his eyes open. He was greeted by the curious and amused faces of the Johnson family. "Oh my, I must have overslept," Santa exclaimed, sitting up and rubbing his eyes. "I'm sorry for intruding like this." The Johnsons assured Santa that it was no trouble at all and that they were delighted to have him as their unexpected guest. Timmy and Jenny bombarded him with questions about his reindeer, the North Pole, and his favorite type of cookie. Santa, with his rosy cheeks and twinkling eyes, answered all their questions with a hearty laugh and a twinkle in his eye. After a while, Mrs. Johnson offered Santa a warm cup of cocoa, and they all sat around the fireplace, sharing stories and laughter. It was as if Santa had become an honorary member of the Johnson family. As the night turned into morning, the Johnsons realized that Santa had a tight schedule to keep. He couldn't stay with them forever, much as they would have liked him to. With a heavy heart, they helped Santa back up the chimney, and with a twinkle of his nose, he was gone, off to deliver presents to other children around the world. But Santa promised he would be back next year, and with that, he disappeared into the snowy night. The Johnsons waved goodbye to Santa, their hearts full of Christmas joy. They returned to their beds, the echoes of Santa's laughter still ringing in their ears. And so, in the cozy town of Chestnutville, the Johnsons had the most memorable Christmas of their lives, all thanks to a sleepy Santa Claus and a night filled with laughter and magic. As for Santa, he couldn't help but chuckle as he continued on his way, knowing that he had made a new set of friends in the Johnson family and had experienced a Christmas adventure like no other. And that, my friends, is the story of how Santa Claus's hilarious holiday hijinks brought laughter and joy to the Johnsons and made for a Christmas they would never forget. Looking forward to seeing you join the Key to Wisdom channel. By tapping the subscribe button, follow or like. You will be notified of future updates. Have a happy holiday.